Now I know what you're thinking.
Oh my gosh. I knew Venice was big, but like, geez, I didn't think a trombone would look so small compared to them.
Firstly, oh my god, you think I'm big? Stop. Secondly,
No.
this is not a normal trombone. Most people, when you say trombone, they think of something like this. This is a B-flat tenor trombone. It is in the key of B-flat, i.e. the fundamental is a B-flat. This is an alto trombone, i.e. the fundamental is an E-flat. I have no idea if that was in tune. This instrument is pitched a whole fourth higher than this instrument. The main reason for that pitch differential is so that this instrument can sound better higher. This tenor trombone, typically they sound really good in the range from B flat to F, and I'm talking about B flat above the staff to F above the staff. So like, you can push it higher or lower than that pretty easily and it will still sound okay. But to a point when you push it too high, it starts to sound really pinched off and tight, and like the notes aren't quite resonating and big like you'd expect a trombone to be. That's where this comes in. This being pitched a fourth higher, it pushes those notes that get pinched way, 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 way up there. So that you can play much higher, much louder, and more in tune, it'll blend nicer. So yeah, that's why alto trombones exist. The reason I have a plastic one is because, let's just say alto trombones get a little expensive. So if you want to learn alto trombone, you kind of have to dedicate to something really expensive. That's why this is nice, because this is much, much cheaper. Much like every trombonist that's in middle or high school, I aspired to be like Christopher Bill. The bass trombone that I own currently, that is my absolute baby favorite instrument that I love, which is the Con 62HI, was actually the horn, I actually only bought it because Christopher Bill played it, which is kind of stupid, I know. And also, much like Christopher Bill, I wanted to know how to play alto trombone. So I bought this because it was the only affordable option to learn to see if I liked it. Needless to say, I didn't. I have a lot of struggles playing high, so I just kind of abandoned playing any kind of first trombone parts anymore, and I've switched primarily to being a bass trombone player. Well, I've actually switched to primarily being a drum set player, but that's a conversation for another day. The company pBone is known for making plastic trombones. They make this plastic alto trombone, which they've titled the pBone Mini. This horn, I primarily only ever used it when I was in the Huskies pep band when I was in college. I remember a fun conversation with a tuba player. We only had so many sousaphones in the pep band, so like, if we had more tuba players coming to that show than sousaphones, they had to figure out something else. A lot of them would grab like one of the concert tubas and just like kind of finagle and hold it, but this guy grabbed a trombone and played trombone with us. And he was standing next to me, and he was at the end of the row, and he was trying to read my slide positions, but because this is pitched essentially being in third position, my slide positions are all over the place, and he's trying to mimic them, and he can't get the notes to hit. And I just remember turning him and go, dude, don't try to copy my slide positions. And he was like, yeah, I know, it's such a bad habit, but like, I can't help it, I'm not used to it. And I stopped him and I said, no. Don't copy my slide positions. And he was like, oh, son. And then we traded spots so that he could copy an actual B-flat trombone player. That was really the only use I ever got out of this. Other than that, this is just like kind of a fun little horn. Oh. Well, seeing as I just did something, let's talk about some downsides to this. Firstly, this tuning slide, if I can get it out, it's abysmally short. Look at these two tuning slides next to each other. The curve at the top is it's a little bit taller next to each other, but like the bits that go into the trombone are so much longer. And on one side, that kind of sucks, because whenever you clean this, I have to lubricate this whole thing, which is going to take up a lot more lube and stuff, so that I can get it in and out of my trombone easier. But the downside is that I have all of this length to work with. I can pull this almost all the way to here to get my trombone in tune. I don't know how many cents sharp or flat that is, but I have a lot more space to work with to get this thing in tune when my face is not working right. Whereas with this, I pretty much only have the option of here, I think, is as far as you can get it before it's going to start coming out, which is not a lot of space. Generally, I haven't had any problems with this being out of tune because like I'm not going to play this in an ensemble setting where I need it to be in tune anyway, but that is a downside that people need to consider if they're going to buy this horn. Another downside that I noticed, I don't know if this is just on my horn or in general, but slide lock on this does not, when it's screwed in all the way, it sits about there, right? But it won't cover the little groove in the slide to keep the slide locked in place. So you actually have to loosen it about a full rotation for it to lock. Which, like, that isn't too horrible. I'm just very used to trombones being like, this is locked open, this is locked closed, and this one can go like all the way around before it locks. Like, if we look at my tenor trombone as a counter example, this slide lock locks back out when it's open so that I can kind of just, while I'm playing, flick it with my pinky and it'll lock out and I won't flick it way too far away, and then I can push it back up to kind of like lock and unlock the horn. So like, yeah, that's kind of a downside. I don't know if that's just with this particular one, if there was some kind of like defect in this serial number that I got. But like, it's not a huge issue. It's generally pretty fine. The final downside that I want to talk about is just the fact that this is made of plastic. A plastic horn just cannot compete and blend with a brass horn. It's not necessarily like plastic is an inferior product, it's just brass horns sing and resonate so much better than plastic does, and if you're going to be in like a concert band setting, odds are you're playing with other brass horns and brass woodwinds and things like that. So the plastic is not going to blend in as well as a brass horn would. And I'm not saying like it's not going to blend in as it's going to stick out. No, you are going to get drowned out by the brass. And if you can get heard, you are going to be screechy and splitty and scratchy and just like, it's not going to work. Pros. Firstly, this horn is very comfortable to play. Even with all like the metal rings that I have on and stuff, like I could hold this thing for forever. The like thickness of this brace compared to my tenor horn, like this one is contoured to fit your hand so much nicer and so much better, whereas like with my tenor trombone and my bass trombone, I have this little hand grip thing that I can clip onto either of them to make them a little bit more comfortable. But even with this, like, it still kind of hurts at times and like isn't the best thing. Whereas with this, because this brace is so thick and it's contoured so nicely, and they even have like a little thumb contour on the back here, I can hold on to this for days. And I also like how it might be hard to see, so I'll get it close for you. But there's a little hook here for your pinky, so that when you're holding the horn, your pinky just rests like right in that spot to hold the trombone up, even if I unlock the slide. So yeah, like generally very comfortable. The plastic also being, or the horn being made of plastic, is much softer. When you press into it, the plastic kind of gives a little bit, has a little bit more of a, like it's not harsh like metal is a lot of the time. So that's very nice. It's also, as I discussed before, very cheap. So like, if you wanted to learn alto trombone and you weren't like sure if you're gonna do it in a bigger setting, this is definitely the way to go with, so you don't have to spend like $2, $3, $4, $5,000 on an instrument that you're not even sure if you're gonna like. It is very good for a musician that's like, if you're a younger musician, like you're in middle or high school, this would be a very good buy for that, because like it's very durable compared to brass. Like if I punch this, the bell's not gonna bend or deform in any way. Whereas if I did that to this horn, which I'm not gonna do because I like this horn, you would start to see already from my rings, there would be dents in the horn scratches. This is much more resistant to torture than this is. So a con of this being made of plastic is that the stockings at the end of the slide have all this black gunk and goop on them that you wouldn't get on a tenor trombone, or a brass trombone, sorry. Some of that is also, like I said, I never cleaned this horn, but that is like, it being made of plastic is both a blessing and a curse at times. But there is another downside that I want to talk about to this, and that is the name. pBone Mini is a cool name. Like, I can't argue with that, but it's a bit misleading. Being a person who's really into music, who grew up with parents that did not know anything about music, kind of sucked. My parents didn't really know anything about music, which they knew, and it's not like they tried to just buy stuff and be like, oh, I'm smarter. They turned to like my high school band teacher and some of my neighbors who were musicians to get advice rather than like just going out on their own. But I know a lot of parents who are not like that and definitely would have bought this for their kid thinking that a smaller trombone would be better for their tiny child. A plastic trombone is not a bad thing at all for like a beginner trombonist. It's much cheaper than a brass trombone. It's much more durable than a brass trombone, so like a kid bumping it into a wall isn't going to break your investment. You also don't have to worry about like, what are you going to do with it when the kid decides they don't want to play trombone anymore. You could probably sell a plastic trombone a lot easier to like one of your other friends, or like give it to a hand-me-down as a nephew or something, you know? Like this horn, which is made of brass and is a full-size tenor trombone that doesn't even have an F trigger, this was $1,000. Which, like, my parents got this for me my senior year of high school, so, like, at that point, I was very much dedicated. I was going to be using it at least for another 4 years in college, and, like, I continue to use this thing almost every day because I just love this horn. If I was in, let's say, elementary school, like, I started playing trombone in 5th grade. My parents did not buy this for me in 5th grade, and they were not going to spend $1,000 on a horn for a newbie in 5th grade. So they actually ended up getting me a really cheap, like $200 metal trombone that was like this, and that thing was just an absolute nightmare. Whereas if they'd gotten a $200 plastic trombone, that thing would have actually been pretty decent, and I'd likely still have it now. Parents that are going to buy a plastic trombone that is much more financially affordable, they're going to see this even slightly more financially affordable and be like, oh, it's smaller, it's going to be better. But it's pitched in an entirely different key, and you're not going to know that unless you know that this is an alto trombone, which I do think pBone does advertise on their website, likely because there have been mix-ups like this. Because this is pitched higher due to the harmonics of brass instruments, there's a range of notes that this cannot play, which includes some pretty common beginner notes such as like low A. Those are notes that you can run into in a concert setting that you just can't play on this unless it has an F attachment, which this one does not. Hi, Dalton the editor chiming in. I said F attachment here. I mean B flat attachment. Alto trombones usually either have a B flat attachment, which does the same as an F attachment, lowers the pitch a fifth of the horn, or they'll have a trill attachment so that you can go really easily on the trombone. They do not usually have F attachments. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the pBone Mini. Please rename it to the pBone Alto, which I think is a super dope name too, by the way. I'm going to be selling this one, so I'm not going to be having it anymore, which is why I decided to make this video now without a script. But I did enjoy the time that I spent with it. I just don't really see myself needing it anymore. This video was entirely just me yapping, so I hope that at least some parts of it were entertaining and informative. If you're interested in learning to play alto trombone, this is definitely what I'd recommend. And then when you like this and you can afford it, fork over $4,000 for the con. Yeah, deuces.